areas, that's just not materializing yet. And with this point, it's looking like we're not getting there at all. Pennsylvania and Wisconsin have flipped. Michigan is still holding, but vote counts in those states are still very, very slow. But at the same point in time, problem areas are opening up in other states now. You've got problems in New Mexico, even, and Minnesota. Those are not as clean of wins as you had hoped. So, although those states are probably going to stay where they are, as I said before we went to break, have to win Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. All three are coin flips. It's now looking like each of those is 60% chance for Trump. So now you have to win all them back. When I first came on the program tonight, I said that the three Midwestern states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, have voted together the same way in every presidential election since 1988. And I think they're going to be voting together the same way as well tonight. I think all three will go the same direction. And at this moment, I think that's very clearly in Trump's favor at this point.
All right. And Ramona G, you've been watching this very closely. What's your take on the latest results that you're seeing?
You know, it's interesting to see the results as they're coming in because, you know, until hours ago, it was a toss-up. I mean, there was a lot of speculation because of the advance polls, which is traditionally in favor of the Democratic voters who come out early to vote. And essentially that wasn't the case. And Republicans usually come out on election day. So given those, you know, traditional facts that, you know, it was still leaning toward for Donald Trump, but anything is, it could have been anyone's game. That's what was, you know, speculated by almost every pollster, every news media. You know, nobody wanted to speculate early. They were just looking at some of these early trends to make a prediction, because we do know that it comes down to a few counties and the swing states. And the swing states, you know what? I'll tell you something interesting about that. I was able to drive through the swing states, spend some time in it, and you know, I realized why they're swing states, why they care about who the candidate is of that election year, what are their policies, how is the economy running, how are certain factors that affect them, right? It's like you want safety, you want jobs, you want opportunities, you want cost of living, all of those factors. And you know, the swing states, you know, the demographics are different than what you see in traditional you know, big urban cities like New York or California or Miami, all those different cities. What you had is, I saw a lot of farmland. I saw a lot of, you know, union type jobs. The crowds that came out, the demographics were of such, and you know, you quickly realize that, you know, these people really care about what, you know, what the issue is on the time, because they need to survive. They need to put food on the table. It's not like, and then you see the big difference between big cities where, you know, I come from a big city and I've lived in big cities most of my life, where, you know, our issues are different. It's very corporate minded. It's very, you know, our issues are like, oh, are there going to be bike lanes? Are there going to be, you know, when it comes to climate change and this and that. Whereas in these swing states, it's really comes down to, can I afford to live? Can I afford to pay my mortgage? You know, are my kids, or are we better off than we were 4 years ago or 8 years ago? And so that was very evident. And interestingly enough, you have Trump, who's a billionaire, and that's his been status and his brand for, you know, decades, whereas he was relating to the common man. Like he, you know, the biggest thing he did when he served, you know, McDonald's through the drive-through window, he put on, you know, the apron and he did that job, and he wore, you know, the union outfits, and he was near the trucks. He did all of those stops, and he was relatable. He went to the barber shop. He went to the community where the community was at. And that's why with the early trends, what we saw with the Black community, with the Hispanic community, all those different communities that, you know, were saying, yeah, maybe we want to vote for Trump. Maybe we're going to leave the Democrats on this side. Maybe, you know, maybe they don't own us in the same way. So those were all telling for what we're seeing tonight in the exit polls. But again, it was, you know, when you rely on the polls for so long, and the other question is, are people honest on the polls, right? Like we saw this happen with the election in 2016, where, you know, Hillary Clinton was leading in the polls for most of the time until election night, and then we saw the results. So tonight, what we're seeing is very big. We're seeing that with the Senate. We're seeing this as we look at the numbers here. You have So they're leading. So the Republicans are leading 48 to 37 in the Senate. In the House, 146 the Republicans to 96 for the Democrats, and governors 26 to 22. So it looks like across the board you're looking at all this red wave that's coming through. So this is, and I'd love to talk about, when we get to it, about what does this mean for the other side, and what are some of the things that they were speculating if Trump does win.
Yeah, so you know what, before I move any further, usually what we do is, as a print guy, I still consider myself a print guy, though I'm doing TV, radio, digital, but in print, you have to have those headlines. So if I were to write a headline, I'll ask each one of you to pick your favorite. I would write deja vu, 2020 again. Only 2 words, 2020 again, deja vu, dead heat, Trump back again. So I think this is what it seems like right now, but there's still lots to cover. Robert, before I come back to you, Robert, why don't I come back to you once again from where we started. Let's talk about, I think if Trump can keep Georgia, Trump can keep North Carolina, Pennsylvania. I still remember in 2016, almost at this point, we were all here, and Pennsylvania, Trump was way, way ahead, even more ahead right now. But I think this time maybe the margin isn't that much, but Trump could take Pennsylvania. Robert?
Yeah, again, usually those 3 states vote the same. They have every election since 1988. Although the outcome in those is not clear, Harris could win any of them, Trump could win any of them. But remember, again, assuming North Carolina stays where it is and Trump holds on in North Carolina, which is extremely likely, assuming he holds on in Georgia, which is extremely likely, assuming he wins in Arizona, which is probably based on just the insane swing we're seeing with Hispanic voters across the board, from Miami-Dade to the Rio Grande Valley in Texas, just the entire southern U.S. No reason to think Arizona is going to be any different from that. So assume he wins Arizona. I'm just assuming that just based off of math at this point. Then Harris does still have a path, but she has to be perfect through the entire Midwest. She has to win Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. A loss in any of those 3 ends the night and it makes Trump president. I think we talked a bit about, and to be fair, this may not be decided tonight, but the kind of, in my opinion, kind of the order of operation here is this is going to feel a little like 2016, where we're up a little late and at 2 a.m. Trump comes out and does a big victory speech there, and I think that's kind of what we're looking at now. I think if any one of those is called at about 2 a.m. or so, then Trump's coming out and making a victory speech. He might do that beforehand, obviously, but that's, I think the most likely outcome is Trump wins at least one of those, and I think there's a very real possibility he just sweeps all 3 of them, because they're very, as the person ahead of me said, they're very demographically similar. They have very similar demographics. They're all 3 of them very heavily white, have large rural components, have some city components as well, but are very heavily white, large rural population. Based on what we're seeing in the rest of the U.S., it doesn't make sense that only those 3 would be okay for Harris. I mean, we're still seeing swings in Minnesota. It doesn't matter. She's still going to win Minnesota, but we're still seeing the same swing in Minnesota. We're even seeing damage in New Hampshire. New Hampshire hasn't been close since 2016. We're seeing damage even there. All of those traditional white states, we're seeing massive swings towards Trump. I'd be shocked if she holds on in any of them, to be in any of those 3, Michigan, Wisconsin, or Pennsylvania. That'd be an upset in my opinion at this point.
Okay, and once again, we're back live here, and just in case you missed the earlier part, we had lots of discussions, and Pankaj, where do you think we are heading once again? Trade wars are at least better than the global wars that we're seeing, a full-blown war, Russia versus Ukraine, a full-blown war in the Middle East. I think trade wars are better. But in case Trump comes to power, what do you see happening to the global economy? China is facing challenges right now. Europe has its own crisis in terms of economy, I'm talking. India is the only bright spot, 6-7%. That's what IMF and World Bank predict right now. US, the economy is doing good, but in case Trump adopts a protectionist policies, which he's already been advocating for, so Canada could face challenges.
Yes, the whole world can change, will face the challenge basically. India might be a brighter spot somewhere because Modi ji can do some tactics and whatever business-minded things, and they might get some out of him. But rest of the world, China, of course, China will suffer. Definitely, because
with Trump coming into power.
Yeah, if Trump comes to the power, China will suffer. India, I don't think so. That much impact will be there. Yeah, there will be tariffs and everything. What if he's putting on all across the world? So then India will also suffer with 10%. But let's see what happens, because they are also in very good situation. Canada will suffer seriously because we are the biggest exporter and we are the biggest importer, basically.
Just for the benefit of the viewers, I'd like to tell you a few numbers here, if you're okay with that. Almost $1 trillion annual trade, almost a $2 billion daily trade. Well, I'm talking about Canada and US. In terms of India, US at one time became the largest trading partner for India. Now it's the second largest trading partner. It's around 120 billion or so. China has once again become the largest trading partner. UAE, which was number one, now has become the third largest trading partner. But you're right, China and US, that's the trade block that we're looking at. Go ahead.
Yes, definitely. Because if we remember the last presidency of Trump, he was very heavy on China. All the time he was putting sanctions and those kind of things. So China will be not in a good situation. Europe, Canada, Mexico, we all comes in 10% tariff category, basically. So, and our economy is not doing that well. Europe's economy is not doing that well. If we get that kind of 10% tariffs, so we will, let's say like our GDP like 0.5 or 0.70 might be gone, basically, with that. So let's see if he does that, or he was just only talking. Now the reality comes, and when all the lobbies and everything goes into picture, their governors of their own states, because the states, we do major import exports with the states. So if state governors come back and ask Trump not to do these kind of things, so we might get some leeway there because of our relationship with our premier or foreign minister or other, like Ontario premier is there, are all province premiers. If they do and lobby, they might get something out. But I feel, Ymedia, it is, for economy-wise for the world, Trump might be a little problematic out of USA. For USA, it will be a problematic, but they might find some way from somewhere else to bring the things which are cheaper. So they might survive. And businesses in US, yeah, of course, because those taxes which he introduced last time, I think it was expiring next year. He will continue that now. Those reduced taxes for businesses, which we can see that, and businesses will get more benefit from this.
A few things I quickly wanted to add from the economic and the geopolitical perspective, which there's definitely an overlap, because I think in today's world, economy, trade, the foreign policy, they all go pretty much hand in hand. And I think from Chinese perspective, I guess the Xi Jinping that we see now, I think Donald Trump's first term from 2016 to 2020, there was a different Xi Jinping. He's facing revolt from within his own organizations, within the Communist Party as well. The foreign minister's challenges, we all know what happened there. This Xi Jinping would come all the way to San Francisco, meet Joe Biden, and would want to do trade with US. This Xi Jinping would shake hands with the Indian Prime Minister. We all know in 2020, because of the Galwan and other border disputes, China and India, they almost had a fist fight. India lost 20 soldiers. China lost 4 as per their account. But then we all know India did put a lot of sanctions, which now Trump is also talking about putting up sanctions. But then the Indian companies came on that we are losing, let's relax all those sanctions. And I think for China as well, where would you get those cheap EVs which China is manufacturing? I don't think so. It's going to be easier for any country, let alone US, manufacturing those EVs which China is manufacturing. At the quality is fine. It's not too bad. And then the prices are okay
So
too.
we are killing Tesla right now?
Tesla manufacturing in China?
No, still like they want to. I don't know what will happen here, but I think now China has to stay out from Taiwan also if they want the business from US, because the chip is like, US wants to control that chip market and China wants to control that chip market also. So let's see what happens in that situation, how Trump reacts on Taiwan. That's the main story will be if China wants to take over that.
Yeah, and I think, Ymedia recently organized Ymedia Leadership and Literary Conference, and in that, one of the questions that I did ask my guest was, what is the number one issue that we see in this century? So I gave them 3 options. Do you think climate change, artificial intelligence, or a full-fledged nuclear war? And when I was referring to nuclear war, it could be between US and Russia, but more so between US and China for Taiwan, as you just mentioned. And I still think so. Yeah, we could manage artificial intelligence as well. Climate change is definitely one of the biggest issues. But China and US, on the issue of Taiwan, we could definitely see, some major issues there. Ramona Ji, what's your take on all this, what we're talking?
Well, I think that countries are going to have to be a little bit more creative in terms of how to diversify, right? You have Canada, which is the 6th largest, when it comes to oil. And that's an opportunity. The XL pipeline was something that Trump had approved before the 2020 election. And as soon as Biden came in, and if you recall, Alberta had already spent like $1 billion back then under Jason Kenney, because the XL pipeline would have been great for the 2 countries. And that was the first order for Biden to be able to cancel that after all the investment that Canada had already done. So I think it's a time where innovation has to come to the forefront, where doing business the old way isn't going to work, especially if there are tariffs, and there needs to be a production value. Whereas there's other companies, like in history, you have through innovation, right? Like Airbnb started during the recession, Uber started in the last recession, Disney, right? GE, Apple. Some of the greatest inventions like the wheel, the light bulb, the printing press, all of these things have, come about through crisis, whether it was a recession and whatnot. So I think that's what we got to look at, right? If there are going to be major tariffs by Trump, then countries need to be a little bit more smart about how they're educating their students, what industries are in the forefront, what are their natural resources, what is their technology factor, how can they become better in the world in terms of not only for domestic production, but also for what they could trade. I mean, Canada alone, if you look at it, like there's tariffs within the provinces, like you can't even trade within the inter-provinces. I mean, let's fix that before we do stuff. The pipeline's a massive thing that would create a lot of jobs in Western Canada. There's a lot of things that could be done. There's always the Ring of Fire in Ontario. There's so much that Canada can do by doing business in a new way, by being more innovative and being more useful, right, to the world, and to the point where if you're able to offer something, then you can make a business case. I mean, with Trump as president, well, he likes to do deals, right? Does it make sense? Is it a win-win situation? And he's the kind of guy, I mean, I understand why the rest of the world and, a lot of the people on the left are very scared for him to win, because last term, he has, won in every other aspect of his life when it comes to business and media and in politics. So he's going to do a lot of things where he has really nothing to lose, and he's going to expose a lot of things. And I think this, disruption is a great time. I think when it's disruptive times, when have you ever innovated? Think about the times where you have reached above and beyond your capacity is when you're challenged, when your back is against a corner. And sometimes we do need that shake up in the world. We do need that in countries. I think we need it for young people and people who are also on, on the retiring side to take a look at things, say, well, what kind of value can I provide in this world? What can I do better? Because when you provide value, when you solve problems, you do well. And that's the way that the rest of the world should be thinking. And I have to say, good on America for, having these type of policies to be able to bring, for Donald Trump, bringing America first, making sure that's the world's greatest GDP when it comes to consumption. Everybody wants to sell into America. So good on him. He's got the upper hand. Why wouldn't he use it?
All right. And once again, Robert, what's your take right now on the overall scenario? Where do we stand now?
Yeah, I mean, the punches kind of just keep coming for the Democratic Party tonight. Let's just kind of step back from the presidential race, which is not looking great, to put it mildly. Republicans came into tonight favorites to win the Senate. They only needed to flip 2 Senate seats. They have already flipped the one in West Virginia. That one was not seriously contested. They are very clear favorites to win in the Montana Senate seat. And they're also now very clear favorites to win the Ohio Senate seat. That would be 3. That would be a 52-48 Senate, assuming assuming nothing else changes. That's what the Senate makeup would have been. That would lock in a Supreme Court Senate majority. They would be able to pass they'd be able to pass laws, assuming they win that House, which the House is 50-50 right now, which is very weird, but apparently Americans do some weird things sometimes in terms of how they vote for president and House. But that's where that would look right now. However, there's a big issue right now for Democrats, is that right now, on top of those 3 Senate seats that I talked about, they're actually currently losing another 3 Senate seats. They're losing the 3 Senate seats right now in Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, the same states that Harris is losing. The Democratic incumbent senators, not the one in Michigan is fighting for an open seat, but all 3 of those are also losing, as Harris is also losing all 3 of those states. And that is a huge problem for Democrats, because at this point now, in the next cycle in 2026, there will be 3 competitive Senate seats for Democrats. Maine, they Republicans hold a Senate seat in Maine. That will be competitive. North Carolina, they hold that Senate seat. That will be competitive. The outgoing governor in North Carolina is a Republican. He'd be able to contest that Senate seat. And then possibly Texas is competitive. I thought that was going to be competitive in 2026 going into tonight. I'm not 100% sure, but it could be. But that's a path to 3 Senate seats. But if you lose those other 3, then that means Republicans still have a 3 Senate seat majority. And then you go forward into 2028, there really isn't 3 more Senate seats for Democrats to pick up. So if they don't win those 3 Senate seats tonight, which looks like those are probably very correlated to the presidential race at this point, Democrats might not hold the Senate until 2030.
Okay. And Trump is still in the lead. That's a very interesting analysis, but still a few votes are coming in. I think Kamala Harris, she is catching up, but Trump still maintains the lead. Ramona Ji, what's your take overall? But you know what, before we get onto the numbers, I have a few questions. Arvind Ji and Pankaj Ji and Robert will all talk about that. Ramona Ji, why don't we get onto this thing? Lots of celebrities. We've covered so many US elections, but we would rarely see so many celebrities really coming out in full swing. Barack Obama, of course, I did a show recently on what is establishment. So almost every country has an establishment. And I also try to check when we talk about establishment, who are those people in the establishment which were always there in 80s, 90s, and some of them were still there in early 2000s, then the Obama administration, and then you still have those numbers during the Trump administration. And now with the Biden administration, you still have that establishment still staying strong. So take us through this establishment, take us through these celebrities coming out in full swing. A lot of Michelle Obama, both of the couple was in full swing. Please take us through all that.
Yes, great. This is something to really, kind of ask questions about. But to my point about the last thing we were talking about when it comes to tariffs, there's a quote that stuck in my mind, and I just pulled it up. It's by Michael Hoff, and this quote is: "Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times." Something we can discuss about, but that's why disruption during hard times, it's always a great thing to create strong and stability. So that I do believe that, regardless of the temperature in the room and the climate, that, good things are to come. Now, when it comes to the establishment, okay, so we've had the shockwaves of what the allegations that have come out against P. Diddy. He was first sued by his, ex-girlfriend, longtime partner Cassidy, and once when the lawsuit came out, he settled immediately within 24 hours. After that, there were endless lawsuits that came towards him, and we saw earlier in the year, you had the police, the Secret Service, everybody roll up and go into his homes in California and Los Angeles, and all of that stuff that you were able to see earlier on in the year. And just recently he was charged and now he's held in prison. So the shock waves that came out about P. Diddy and the types of things that were going on, and the accusations of sexual assault and intimidation and all kinds of things, and and all the celebrities that were involved, and so there's a lot of speculation about what does that mean. So now I think Kamala Harris, her campaign had a lot of the celebrities come out for her during a lot of different rallies in the last few weeks. Now the question may be, did that help her or did that hurt her in a time where people are now looking at celebrities in a different way, the culture behind it all, through some of the shocking allegations that have come out, if you've read any of these lawsuits. I think that hurts her. Somebody like Usher, for example, who is the right hand of P. Diddy for a good time, and how they're connected. Well, a few weeks ago when he was asked about the election, he said, everybody has their own opinion and should vote, as they see fit. And just a couple of weeks ago, he was, at her rally. You got Eminem coming out of retirement, endorsing her, but they were all like reading a piece of paper, right, with their head down. You had Beyonce come out, and Lizzo and the rest of them, and do these celebrities have that much leverage? Taylor Swift, that was one of the biggest endorsements Kamala Harris got, because of the statement that JD Vance made about childless cat ladies, and that's when Taylor Swift, about her cat, and saying that she'd giving her endorsement after that debate between her and Trump. So, overall, it's how much weight did that have? Now that we see these numbers, did the celebrities really help her? It seems not, because if you believe that they had the level of influence that you think they have, that it should have changed some of those exit poll numbers that we're seeing come out through state by state. Now, when it comes to the Obamas, what's interesting about them is that Obama's the only president that didn't leave DC after his term. Usually all the presidents go to their native state. The Bushes went back to Texas. Usually, the Clintons went back. Well, I think they stayed in New York, but, upstate New York. And, with Barack Obama coming from Illinois, Chicago, you'd think he'd go back. So there's a lot of speculation, like who was really running the White House after that first debate with Trump and Biden. You saw, and there was a lot of speculation about Biden's mental state and his ability to function, and all of that, and they really kept him quiet, and they kept him behind the scenes. And if he wasn't using his teleprompter and all of that stuff, we've seen all the skits that have come out from SNL and the rest. But it made you really think, like, who is running the White House? Before, you think that it's the president makes decisions, it's the president that is in the White House, who leads the White House. But really, you start to think, okay, if he wasn't doing well and she has been absent on the scene for the last 3.5 years, really she got the media didn't treat her well as vice president. That's the other thing. For the 3.5 years, people did not say good things about her as her ability to do her job. It was only since she became the candidate, all of a sudden the media switched their narrative about her, and how tough she is and what she's done as district attorney, and not so much as vice president. So putting that aside, you really start to think, who's in charge? Is it just like a council of people? Is it like board of directors that runs the White House and makes decisions, and they just have a representative like Biden, or what people fear would be Biden-like, would be Kamala Harris in charge? So that's the other thing. But also, it all goes to show on the debate, the second debate with Trump and Kamala Harris, you also saw that Trump was not heavy on policy, right? Like, he was saying the stuff that he would say at his rallies. And again, you start to realize, okay, these people get in office, they get into White House, they have thousands of people that work for them, thousands of people who have their PhDs, who do the policy work. These guys, you think they make really high level decisions. So it was very interesting. And as you've seen Kamala Harris in all her interviews, like, when they ask her questions about how are you going to pay for it, how are you going to pay for this policy, what are you going to do if you don't have the House or the Senate, and she just doesn't have an answer, as if it didn't dawn on her. And when you ask Donald Trump, he just talks about tariffs. So really, you start to think maybe they're not very policy heavy, right? They have the broad ideas, but it's really the people that do the work under them. So that's something else to highlight. But when it comes to the Obamas, yeah, you have to think, like, Obama, he was very charismatic during his time as when he gave his speeches and all that. But recently, there's been a repercussion like against him because of the way he went at the black vote, and really talking down to black men, saying that you're not voting for Kamala Harris because maybe she's a woman. And that was at a campaign stop, and it was recorded, and there was a lot of backlash from that as well. And the other thing is, race does, that's brought up a lot in this election cycle. It started with Donald Trump saying, he didn't realize that she was, half black, being half Jamaican and only Indian, because he was like, for the past few years, she just said she's Indian. So that, so then of course everybody on social media went and checked into it. And then you had the black community saying, well, she never said she was black. And so, there was a lot of extra stuff that, that mattered to people, and it was, a little bit loud. But that had to do with, at the end of it, my point is, it had to do with a trust factor, right? Do you trust her in terms of like who she is, who she says she is? What does she represent in terms of policies? There's certain things that she switched on. What's her identity? What has she done the last 3.5 years? All of those, were highly unknown. Yes, given that she had 60 days to campaign, but in those 60 days, still not much came out of it in terms of where does she stand, who is she? Because what it is election time, people vote for you, and they vote that they're getting married to you for the next 4 years. They can't get a divorce from you in those 4 years. It's a marriage, right? So it's, and in many ways, it's not going to be an arranged marriage, because they want to understand how much of this person do we believe? What is their track record? What are their thoughts? What are their ideas? Does it make sense? How are they going to do it if they're confronted? In this geopolitical climate, are they going to be able to go have a meeting with Russia or China or India? What, like those are the level of questions people are asking. And if they cannot get simple answers, and the trust factor is a little bit off, then that's why we're seeing the numbers that we are. Because with Donald Trump, whether you like him or don't like him, or whether you're displeased with the things he says or his behavior and all the other things, he's been consistently the same person, right? Consistently, he's been the same type of character. And then there's also a lot of speculation that when he comes into office, he's going to reveal a lot of things. Elon Musk has gone on the record to say that he's going to open up the files of I'm sorry, I slipped, my mind slips on his name, but the guy who was charged, and he hung himself in prison. The Epstein, sorry, the Epstein files.
Jeffrey
Musk
Epstein.
Yeah, he's gone on record to say that he thinks that billionaires are scared if Trump gets into office, because he's going to open up the Epstein files. Because Epstein, nobody knows who's on that list. Like, there's speculation of who was, obviously they saw the flight records of who traveled on his plane to his islands and to other places, but the actual list hasn't been revealed. And Elon Musk did say through his interview with Tucker Carlson that Trump is going to open that up. There is a lot of speculation about why are the Obamas so scared, what's going to come out about them. It seems like, in terms of the narrative that's been playing around for quite some time from some of these influencers and on different media networks that, he's going to expose a lot of things. So it's not only going to be disruptive when it comes to trade, when it comes to, tariffs, but it's going to be disruptive when it comes to the status quo of what we think of certain people and what's really going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Thank you for giving such good insight towards what's happening in US. And would like to once again tell you, Ramona G is there in California, one of the big states in terms of size and definitely in terms of population as well, one of the biggest states in US. We'll talk about California. More results are coming in for California. We'll talk about that. You are in California, but I just want to talk a little bit more about this. Robert, why don't I come to you this time? One of the major challenges that we faced last time, whether it was Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and so many other, while the mail-in ballots were factored in, we saw, on the election night, it looked like, just as it looks like now, on the election night, it still looked like, in 2020, I'm not talking 2016, 2020, it still looked like maybe Trump has a chance. But then you saw the blue wave coming in once the mail-in ballots, and that's why I was listening to a Republican lawyer recently, and he still believes that was a stolen election. And I know we had the January 6th incident at the Capitol Hill, so many other things happened. We all saw that. Now my question is, that's as per the law. So we still have a lot of mail-in ballots which are about to come and counted. Do you see still a chance for the blue wave to surge back once again? The Democrats really in for a gain. Why? Because there's an email circulating within the Democratic camp, which is saying right now things are looking good for us. So what is it? Go ahead, Robert, your analysis.
I mean, look, if you're a Democrat, you're trying to spin this right now, give some sort of hope, but I'll say this. Let me just 1 second. The problem is that the results that are in, so you can say, oh, there's more Democratic vote remaining, and there are still Democratic votes remaining, 100%. There are more votes remaining. That's fine, and they will probably close the gap somewhat. But the problem isn't the fact that there are more votes remaining. The problem is what we already know. So I'll just kind of highlight here Lackawanna County. So Lackawanna County, funny sounding name, but it's home of Scranton, Pennsylvania. People call this the birthplace of basically, this is like a second home for Joe Biden. They've actually named one of the highways the Joseph R. Biden Expressway. That's Scranton, Pennsylvania. Joe Biden won it by 8 points. This is a pretty large city, right? In 2020, there was about 115,000 votes in Scranton. This is also, if you remember, this is actually the home of the TV series The Office. That's it's based in Scranton, Pennsylvania. So that's the result we have. In Biden won it 54-45, so about 9 points depending on how you want to round that. That's fine. Tonight, Scranton is 99% in. Harris is winning it by 3. That's the problem. That's the ball game right there. Like, yeah, there's more Democratic votes remaining in Philadelphia and probably in Pittsburgh and some other areas. That's fine, but where the vote is in, where we have the most number and we have the highest percentages, they're losing too many votes, right? Joe Biden only won Pennsylvania by 1. If you replicate that swing in Scranton across the entire state of Pennsylvania, Trump wins by like 2 points, right? That's the problem. I mean, yes, there are more votes remaining, and currently Trump's winning by about 4, so that gap will probably close. But like, I don't see. But again, like, turnout is roughly 2020. It's roughly 2020. It's a bit higher. So for example, in Scranton, we have about 105,000 votes. So there's about 10,000 more votes left there. I doubt they're all going to break one way. They're probably going to split kind of more evenly. But this is the problem. And again, that's just Scranton, Pennsylvania. Right below it, there's another white working class county that has another 60,000 votes. And this is the problem with the Rust Belt. This is the problem with those 3 Midwestern states, is that because they're all homogeneous that way, they all have very similar demographics. When one goes it that way, because these states are they're basically beside each other and they're demographically similar, you see this replicated again and again and again across all 3 states in all these counties that are similar. It's all small-ish town, like cities that have about 100,000 people, but they're larger, so there's a larger rural component to it as well. They're predominantly white, predominantly working class, and when all of them go when one starts going one way, they all usually go that same way, and that way tonight is towards Donald Trump and putting him back in the White House for another 4 years, right? And in many ways, these numbers look very, very similar to 2016. It's interesting. We talk about this. Um, there's going to be some polling questions about this election. It's interesting because in our polling and in everybody else's polling, we all caught the Hispanic vote shifting towards Republicans. We saw that. We knew Florida was not going to be good. We knew Texas was going to have some problems. We saw the Hispanic vote shifting towards Republicans. We saw that. And we also saw the black vote shifting towards Republicans as well. So and that's another reason why the spin from Democrats is not really believable, because there is going to be a shift towards Trump in Philadelphia, in Pittsburgh, in those larger urban areas. So that we saw. What we didn't see is shifts in cities like Scranton. According to the polling, roughly extrapolated, Harris should have actually been doing better than Biden in some of these cities. She should have actually been doing about a point or two, not a lot, but about a point or two better. But it's seeming like roughly she's doing about 3 to 4 points worse than Biden did. And that's where the polling error is here. The pollsters captured the issue with Hispanic voters and with black voters. What we didn't capture is it seems like this polling miss actually feels a little similar to 2016 in that respect, where it's missing a key white voter segment that apparently was very, very mad at Democrats and just turned out. And maybe there's something to that. There's obviously going to be a lot discussed about that, but it's very prevalent in these white working class cities and even in the suburbs. We see that in Virginia, in just countrywide. We're seeing it in these suburbs, and I that was not in the polling. Like Scranton moving 4 points right, that wasn't in the polling. But again, that just underscores the Democrats' position here that yes, they're spinning and they can close that gap. I believe they will close that gap. They're probably only going to lose Pennsylvania by about a point or two, but I don't see a path for a win here. I mean, again, there's still a lot of these rural counties are pretty much done. There's still more vote in Erie. There's still more in Allegheny and Philly, obviously, but and some of the collar counties in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is probably not that bad, but Northampton County, actually, here in outer Philly, this is the most Hispanic county in all of Philadelphia and in all of Pennsylvania, just kind of outer Philly. Trump is winning this county. Biden won this county by like 5. Trump is winning it now by 6. So by about 5-6. So this underscores the problem. And then, okay, great, you can win Pennsylvania. Okay, now you got to worry about Wisconsin, and Wisconsin is even more white than Pennsylvania. So you have to worry about that swing you saw in Scranton there. And then Michigan, well, you now have to worry about the same type of rural right voters, but now you also have a larger Muslim population in outer Detroit that seems to be in early returns heavily voting against the Democrats. Democrats are at 15% there. They were at 80% there just 4 years ago. Now, obviously, there's reasons for that. Israel and Palestine and Gaza, that's the reason for that. But again, this like the spin that, oh, no, there's votes remaining. There are, but I don't like there's other votes remaining too, and I don't think there's a path here.
Yeah, I think you're right. We've already seen some early numbers here, and the numbers that we're seeing, you're absolutely right. The Hispanic vote has shifted towards the Republicans, yes, and so has the black vote shifted, and Trump is actually doing much, much better than what he did in 2020 with the Hispanic vote, with the black vote, and as you just mentioned, the Muslim or the Arab vote in so many areas, including Michigan as well, and about the Indian vote as well. They've been traditionally supporters of the Democrats, but now they're shifting towards the Republicans as well. And I think Trump knew, if I could give a few examples, Trump knew what to say, what not to say about Israel and Palestine. I know if you look at his 2016, I was doing a search on who are his donors, where does he bring his money from, where does he do his fundraising in 2016, 2020, right now. So yes, there has been good support from from the Jewish community as well. But I think he was a little bit more cautious. So that was good for him regarding the black vote as well, the Hispanic vote as well. Another point I wanted to make, right on the day of Diwali, as much as Ramona G was mentioning earlier as well, Kamala Harris, yes, there was a lot of discussion. Her mother, other than the middle class thing, I think she used that word a lot, that she's from middle class, but then other than that, she also used, she should talk a lot about her mother. And yes, she was, because her parents separated, and she was definitely raised by, more so by her mother, and her mother is from southern part of India, so she'll talk about of her Indian descent. She had special op-eds written on Diwali. We got that op-ed as well, which she wrote for Diwali. Yeah, so we're getting a lot of emails these days from US as well, and the Democrats, they got our email. They have sent us a lot of content, what's going on there, which is good for us. But other than all these things, what I saw, Donald Trump, right on Diwali day, he would say, yeah, by the way, Joe Biden was also saying, this is the biggest Diwali ever celebrated in a White House. But then you had Donald Trump. He came out in full swing and he started making statements, what's happening in Bangladesh. I'm going to protect Hindus from the left. So as much as, yes, there's a lot of Indian community, approximately 6 million, that's the number that I see, approximately 6 million Indian origin people in the US. And they got in heavy numbers as far as voting is concerned, fundraising activities. They're quite active in politics as well, as much they don't have that many congressmen there, but they're still actively participating. But to say this on Diwali, that Trump is going to protect Hindus, and then during his interviews he was mentioning about Modi. He was clearly saying this guy, is very tough. He does this, he does that. So I think Trump, whether it was his strategy or, as Ramona Ji was saying, he comes out quite naturally. And I kind of agree with what Ramona Ji said. Kamala Harris, I mean, what does she really stand for? Maybe we know who she is, maybe we not. I'm not going to debate that at a personal level, but definitely, what do you stand for? I mean, there are so many challenges that US is facing. We may agree or disagree with Trump, but there are many things that we do not know. Is Kamala Harris, are the policies going to be just Joe Biden 2.0, or is she going to be any different? So there's not much of a clarity on that side. I know she came on quite late, and even during the debate or during her interviews, I mean, there was not something out of the ordinary. I would listen to those discussions that Kamala Harris would come on TV, and even her articles or anything. So as a journalist, I always want to listen to substance. What are you going to bring? What is your vision for a country or a community? So I wasn't feeling that sort of vision. I think that part was lacking. But then when you drill down, when you go down at the ground zero, there's so many other issues which are circulating. Before I go on back to Ramona Ji, once again, Pankaj, I want to bring you in here. What do you see for US, Canada? We've already spoken regarding the economy. I want to bring you back. What do you see about the numbers? Because inflation is a big factor. I know US, they've been targeting the inflation numbers with the interest rate. 2.4 right now. That's
we are 1.6, so we are way below. They are a little higher, but still, like, they will reduce the interest rate because their inflation is going down. Still, like, we can see that. But economy has a strength, very robust. So, but their mortgages are slowing down. Their real estate is slowing down. So they need to bring interest rate down so that they can. Some part of the economy is slowing down. The rest is doing well. So they need overall economy. So that's why they are bringing the interest rate down. But number-wise, you were asking about the economy, how it...
Yeah, I was asking about the economy. 2 points on the economic and the finance side. I know that the second question I'm going to ask is a little bit tied to the political side as well. One thing is this, I haven't still agreed with the way Bank of Canada and the US Fed, the way, yeah, we've always had discussions on that in the past as well, I know. Yeah. But the way they would, increase the interest rates from if you look at the history last 10 years from 2014 to 24, or even 2012 to 2022, they haven't moved the interest rates from 0.25. The max was 1.75. So mostly it's 0.25, 0.5, 0.7. Why would you suddenly move up the interest rates out of the ordinary for me? Because last 10 years you don't do that, and suddenly it's not above 2%, it's not above 3%, it's or 5%. So that's one question. So that's bringing a lot of things down. That's one question. And the same question for US as well. The second part of the question, a little bit on the geopolitical side as well, the defense budget. 1.29%, that's the defense budget that we have as per our GDP right now. I've asked this question to Bill Blair, Anita Anand, she was the defense minister. There was Harjit Sajjan, he was here. I asked him the same question as a defense minister. So I asked many defense ministers the same question. Because if Trump comes back, that'll definitely be on the table. He would definitely want, he's been asking that before as well. Donald Trump wants every nation to bring this. And he's been threatening, he doesn't like NATO.
Yeah.
And he wants, okay, even if he stays in there, he would definitely want Canada, all other countries to move that to 2%. Let's talk about Canada. If Trump comes, what will happen about NATO? He wants these numbers to go up. You're a finance guy, you're when we talk of the budget, Canada, can we really afford billions of dollars more? We're already in deficit. There's a huge debt piling up, and we're talking about fiscal restraint from Chrystia Freeland. This is an election year. Trump comes in, an election year. He presses, I want you to move your numbers up. It's 1.29%. It's not even 1.5. Where are you going to bring all those billions of dollars for increase in the defense spending?
Definitely, you're right. We don't have that much money. Yeah. Seriously, we are in deficit. We are in debt. Both places, deficit, yearly debt, in like how much debt we have, which we are already serving. So I don't think so they can match 2%. How they will raise the money? They need to increase the taxes, which you cannot right now. So that thing they have to talk to our other countries or whatever leeway we can get as a Canada, if they can. They have to do it, otherwise there is a furious Donald Trump is there. So we'll see what happens on that side. On interest side, what you said, we always discuss this thing on radio also. Before 2008 recession, we were actually 4.5 or 4% prime rate. 2008 came, and it was a big recession. So that time we reduced the interest rate. We went to 40-year mortgage, saved our country somehow from the recession. But we couldn't come out for another 3-4 years. So it was 2012 or 13 where we started picking up. Our real estate started picking up. Our business started picking up. And they started increasing interest rates slowly. If you remember, before COVID, we were 3.9, I think, prime rate. Yeah. Around 4%, basically, 3.85 or 9. So we were going up slowly, but then COVID hit. So that's why these 10 years, we were in problem all the time. So COVID, we had to decrease it to 0.25 or 0%. So now, here the central bank, every central bank did mistake. They thought inflation is transitory. It will go down because there was a gap in between demand and supply. Supply was not coming, demand was there. So every country thought, every bank, central bank thought that it's demand and supply issue. So as soon as supply comes in, COVID, everything will open, then demand will be, we can satisfy the demand, but it does not happen. It didn't happen, sorry. So it didn't happen, and everybody has to rush to those kind of situation where they had to increase rate. Not we only, US, Europe, everybody did it. Australia did it, New Zealand did it. So everybody did it. So I can understand it's their mistake, but nobody could understand that time. That's why we went up. So now, as soon as we saw our inflation was 8%. something. US went to 9% also. The US is now 2.4. We are, even last month, we were 1.6%. So now we are coming down, and slowly, not slowly, now we have gone down like last, we have seen the 50 basis, and before that also 25, 3 times, 75 plus 50, 1.25, we are already gone. And 11 December is the date for us. We might, I'm not saying anything, we might go down another 0.50. So they are trying to pick up our economy, but US side, it's already only some parts which are not doing well. Rest, I would go 70 to 80% economy in US is doing really well. So that's why they can afford to go a little slow. They went 50 basis point, but now they can afford to go a little slow because their inflation is still 2.4%. Let's see what inflation comes next for them. Otherwise, I think now the landscape will change basically in US also. We don't know the result, but the way it looks like, soon enough it will be announced or whatever happens. So we'll see within 6 months of presidency how the economy is shaping for us and for US or for the world.
Yeah. Thank you. Very good points. I have a few points to make. I have to go back to Ramona G as well. But before I do that, Robert, why don't I come to you? California, North Carolina, the projections are heading towards Trump. It doesn't look very good for Harris. It doesn't look very good for the Democrats right now. What do you say? Things are moving fast towards Trump right now.
Yeah, I mean, California, Harris has obviously a big lead as expected. She's up by about 1.8 million votes. Again, 41% in. She will win California by millions and millions of votes. However, right now she's up 61-36, about 25-ish%, give or take. Biden won it by 30 4 years ago. So that margin alone compresses your popular. That alone is probably a 1% loss in your popular vote win total right there, just right off the bat, because Biden won by 4.5 points. California is about 12% of the country, assuming about a 5, maybe more potentially when we see more results. A lot of California is mail-in. That alone takes off a whole percentage of the popular vote. So we're looking at roughly a tied popular vote here. Outside of that, I mean, again, Trump now has leads in all 3 Midwest states, with basically the same number. He's up 51-48 in Pennsylvania, 52-47 in Michigan, and 51-48 in Wisconsin. Varying degrees of vote in all 3 of those. But again, those are similar margins, and I'd expect similar margins. Again, North Carolina, by some networks, has been called. Trump's going to win that by 100,000 votes or so. Look very similar to 2020. Actually, probably a similar percentage to the 2016 number, about a 3-point win in North Carolina, similar to before. Georgia is closer, but again, we're looking around at the board of this. Fulton is now 93% in. Democrats kind of tapped out there. They got a lot of the Gwinnett County vote. That's another Atlanta suburban county. Like a lot of the votes are in heavily Democratic areas, and there's still a little bit of vote left in some of the more rural areas. But again, they can close the gap there, but at a certain, and maybe she could win Georgia. She could win Georgia, but at a certain point, the situation in the 3 Midwest states is so dire that I don't even know if that's going to matter. Even if she were to somehow win Georgia, which there is a path to win Georgia, but the situation in the other swing states is so dire that I don't think even winning Georgia is going to matter at this point.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because let's start with Pennsylvania. We're looking at Pennsylvania, and again, I'll stick to what I said right at the start of the show. I know everyone was talking about 7 swing states, so I thought, let me pick one. As much as we picked 2 in 2020, we picked 3 in 2016. Remember, we picked 3 states in 2016. and we picked two in 2020. This time I just wanted to pick one, so I picked Pennsylvania out of every single state. And Pennsylvania was, look at that. I mean, Kamala Harris was way ahead. Then we had Trump closing in on the lead, then Trump almost equal. I think they're ahead by 100.
Now it's 3.70.
Yeah, they're almost 200,000 votes ahead. So same thing as in 2016. So I guess you're right. Maybe Georgia may not even matter at the end of the day because, or there are other states, because so Wisconsin, they're doing good. Pennsylvania, it's looking very, very difficult here. So we'll talk about this, but I think you had a question for, Robert wanted to ask you a question on inflation. Robert,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So I mean, the thing is, a lot of the analysis is, and I think the Federal Reserve has their meeting tomorrow. I think it's expected a 25 basis point cut for them as well. I think
Yes.
people had in the most recent weeks we've kind of seen a tick up in the 10-year yield. I think on the kind of fear of a Trump win and him starting trade wars, which would spike inflation. If like, because again you're talking about the slowing American and also the slowing Canadian economy. If Trump kicks off a trade war starting putting 10, 20, 30% tariffs on, just blanket tariffs on some countries, would that not massively increase inflation, and would that not in turn then massively increase interest rates, not just in Canada but in the US as well?
Uh, it depends, because what will happen if US increases 10% tariff on, let's say, Canada. So the pressure will be on more on Canada that to give little lower prices so that the 10% can be absorbed and we can supply the things to US, because they are more important for us than they think, because they can go anywhere else and get the thing. So if we want to supply to them, so we need to reduce our margins now. So it might not for US, but it can be a problem for Canada, because we might lose manufacturing factories or some transport companies or those kind of things. It will impact little bit to US. We'll see if they cannot get the things done cheaper somewhere else or from us. Otherwise, we will try to give cheaper things.
Yeah, and yeah, Ramona Ji, I'll come to you now. What do you make of it? Is it very difficult for the Democrats? Is it very difficult for the Kamala Harris campaign, or you think there are still some chances? What do you make of it?
It looks very difficult for her campaign. I mean, her campaign was really hoping that with the numbers that came out in advance votes, traditionally for Democrats, they're hoping that it would have been a flip, that the Democratic voters would have shown up on election day, which is traditionally for Republicans. So everything that they were hoping for, it seems to be reversed. I mean, even all the decisions they made as of late, right? First, keeping her quiet, away from any sort of interviews for almost the first half of her candidacy, which create a lot of questions around her in terms of how she's different from Biden. And then when she did come out, her interviews were with her running mate for about 20, 30 minutes, and then her ABC interview. Her 60-minute interview was cut and pasted. It wasn't really full answers. That created a lot of speculation from when they did the teaser to the actual interview, people questioning what did she actually say. They decided to take her for, some very friendly media after that. After she did the Univision town hall and a few others that didn't do so well, they took her on The View. And this was just a few weeks ago. The View has been traditionally very Democratic in terms of what their stance is. And it was a very easy sort of interview for her, for the media. And they had asked her, they're like, what would you, if anything different than Joe Biden? And she was like, I'm paraphrasing, but along the lines of, I can't think of anything. I decided everything with him. I was part of every decision. And so for her to not to distance herself early on and even later on into this candidacy from Joe Biden, because Joe Biden's had a horrible track record when it comes to their borders. It's been a crisis with the numbers of 20 million illegal border crossers. Quotes have been around like over 100,000 are ex-convicts that have come into the country. Obviously, with what's happening with all the different wars and them not being able to really do much about it. Whereas during Trump's time, people are looking at the difference, right? They're saying, well, during Trump's time, yes, there was tariffs, but there was no wars. And then I don't think it helped her to have Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney backing her because, from what we know from Bush's era and Dick Cheney's, vice president era, it was a lot of wars. It was the war against terror. It was the war against this. It was the war against a lot of different things for a very long time. And for her to go on stage with Liz Cheney, I don't think that did her any favors. I don't think it did her any favors to bring out the celebrities. I don't think it did her any favors to not be able to answer basic questions. What would you do from day one? I don't think it did her any favors when she just kept repeating herself about being middle class and her mom and her upbringing and her lawn and the garden and all these different things. And whereas on the difference, like you did mention, yeah, Trump seemed to know what to say to the right voter base. What I noticed different about him in this this is his third election, right? So if anyone's done elections, he's a veteran now in terms of doing all these debates and election processes. But one thing I noticed about this election cycle compared to the last and the one before that is he turned on the charm. If you notice, he was no longer, the way he was doing it in the previous elections. But if you saw him at McDonald's, what he was saying to people, he was complimenting them. When you saw him at the barber shop, he was complimenting them. He was very approachable. And he's very good. And you know what? He actually has a great sense of humor. Like he says the funniest things, whether you think it's funny or offensive, that's to be determined based on the person, to each perception. But, his comedic timing of certain things, and how he just braved against the execution attempt. I mean, come on, think about it. If you were shot at, would you really stand up for 2 or 3 times and put your hand, fist in the air, or would you be terrified, perhaps screaming and crying? So what they were able to see of a man, in distress and still hold it together is what they're looking for, right? I mean, why do we elect leaders? We elect leaders to be the person who's going to do the hard job, right? Who's going to make the best decision for the people. And what we've seen with under the Biden administration with Kamala Harris with the wars and it's true, like people are fearing, is this going to be a nuclear war? As we see these wars continue and US not being able to do what they've done in the past, to be able to come to some sort of agreement, whether it's with Israel and Palestine and Lebanon, whether it's with Russia and Ukraine and everything else that's going on, and as of late with Iran as well. Whereas Donald Trump's is tougher on these things, and people seem to think that he can handle it because he's actually done the job once before. So, what is a path for her tonight? It looks very hard as the numbers come in. Like Robert said, there are votes, but what is likelihood? Does it? You did say, what would be the headline if we could all choose one? And mine would be what I heard, a lot of people say on the left, saying the left us. Even when it comes down to some of the Democratic election campaigns that I've been involved with, they're saying we can't really identify with them because this was supposed to be the party of people, and now it's moved so far on so many different issues that people can't relate to as much. I would say the saying, the left us, and perhaps some of those Democratic voters stayed home. Perhaps some of them secretly voted for Donald Trump. But we're looking at these numbers, and I am concerned about actually the mail-in ballot. Let's see what that means, because a lot of so California passed a law under Governor Newsom that you can't ask for ID, right? Voter ID. That's unheard of, right? Because only a citizen should be able to vote, and on top of that, you should be able to display your voter ID, which is something that's very common in Canada. It's nothing to be disputed about. So it'll be interesting to see what discrepancies they might be, if anything, how long the counting goes. But it's coming along quite well. I think we'll hopefully know by the end of the night. I'm in an earlier time zone than you guys, but of how this is going to go.
Yeah, Yeah, I couldn't agree more on the points that you just made, and I like your two-word headline. We're having two-word headlines here. Left us. Yeah, that's a nice one too. Left us. So we'll see which one do we want to pick. Deja vu, left us. It's all over again. Trump back in action. So there are so many good headlines that we're getting over here. But there was a time when we were thinking the Democrats, especially in the Obama era, I would say. It was like this: the Democrats, their tent is increasing. What are the Republicans going to do to bring back them? All these things. But as Ramona Ji, to your point, and this is what I've also read, you're there at ground zero. You're there in California. You've traveled a lot in US, so you know a lot more. I know Robert has been following all the stories. I've been trying to read few stories through newspapers or few through TV. I mostly do print because the advantage with print sometimes it is, though we want to promote our TV as well, in a short span you can read a lot. And anyways, but I also feel the same. I think whenever you read anything, the gist would be they're angry voters. They're angry with Democrats for so many reasons. And of course, inflation being one of them, housing. As much as you were talking about the people at the top, the pyramid at the top, of course you're right, the economy is in great shape. And I would listen to a few commentators, and they were right, as you're also right. The economy is in great shape, good businesses, all those things, but people at the bottom of the pyramid, I think that's where they're facing a lot of challenges with housing, interest rates going up. I know they're bringing it down, but still. And I think I agree with Robert. Another 25 basis point, the Feds will. Yeah. The next,
we are expecting that. Yeah.
We are all expecting that. But how much will that make a difference? Because already things have gone way up. There are challenges for the average American. That's what I would say. And I think this is vote more of anger. That's what I see. Let me ask each one of your opinion. This is vote more for anger. This is vote more to tell the Democrats that you didn't do much for us. There were good 4 years. So you didn't do much for us. I think this is more of a vote, a referendum on Biden administration, and maybe Kamala Harris. She didn't get much to do, but maybe a Biden administration, the Democratic administration, if I may use that word, to tell them you didn't do much for a common American.
I will little differ respectfully here, because Trump's agenda was, he was not saying that I will do this. He was saying like, I will not let any immigrant come. Those rhetorics were more basically, the anger was that kind of where immigrants are coming, they are ruining our country, goons are coming, they are killing our people, people are eating dogs and cats, whatever was happening. So those kind of things actually made people angry, I think. More than inflation and economy, interest rate. Interest rate impact in Canada is different, because our mortgages are 5-year mortgage, we have variable mortgage, but they have 30-year fixed mortgage, 20-year fixed mortgage. They don't have 5-year variable kind of situation, so their mortgages are fixed. So yeah, for new house, if they want to go and take today, 30-year mortgage fixed in 5% is too much. That's why real estate is suffering there now, slowly, when interest rates are coming down. Yeah, their personal loans, their car loans, and those kind of things, they are suffering. But I think anger was there, but anger was more towards hatred, not towards economy, I feel.
Yeah. When I say, I think it was a collective anger on many issues, like the Arab community, because I was listening to many people in the Arab or the Muslim community. They were saying, okay, let it be Trump this time. And now here we have the Hispanic community, the black community. I mean, 8% more voters. We don't have the final numbers now, but 8 to 10% more numbers in the black community, 8 to 10% more voters in the Hispanic community, despite all these things that we're doing. Although there were things from other side, the garbage thing as well. But
Puerto Rico,
so many other things on the other side as well. But we're seeing, Trump flipping few states here, because I mean, as much as I would agree, Trump, as Ramona G was saying earlier, Trump is straightforward. Okay, he is what he is. You may like or you may not like him, but at the end of the day, he comes across as someone, who speaks up his mind, and there were always questions. But then they didn't answer anything. Democrats, what did you answer for a common American? And as Ramona G was mentioning earlier as well, and I was listening to that thing on TV channel, well, there are so many articles from a common man's perspective, the piece in Globe and Mail as well. All of them, I think, the gist that I got, there's still a lot of dissatisfaction, if you don't want to use the word anger, a lot of dissatisfaction, a lot of anger at the grassroots. Cities like San Francisco, San Francisco are having challenges. They're going bankrupt. The crime is on the rise. San Francisco, the property values are on decline. There is a huge, that San Francisco is a city which would have so much of tech hub. The Bay Area, including San Francisco, was always very highly rated. Xi Jinping chose that area. There's a lot of Chinese community there, a lot of Indian community there. But now there are discussions that what's going on here. So I think these issues, whether it's inflation, whether it's housing, whether it's crime, so things do matter. And the illegal or undocumented people. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No. I wanted to say, like, I just when you were saying, it reminded me the first Trump era. I would say. Remember that Black Lives Matter and so many protests that time. Black protests were going on.
Yeah.
I think Joe Biden came because those black votes more.
Yeah.
And this year those black people didn't turn up. They went to Trump. I think
There is no motivation behind.
there's no motivation.
There's no
behind.
motivation. There's not a better alternative here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll go back to Robert and then Ramona. Let's hear from both of them. Robert, I want to start with you. Of course, you can talk about the issues and then we'll quickly move on to Ramona. But I want you to start. Where are we right now? Things are still not looking good. I see 3% lead, 2%, 2.5, even 4% lead in most of the key states that we're witnessing. Hawaii is about to close right now, but most of the key states, if I look at all the, I'm looking at 9 key battlegrounds right now. Out of the 9 key battlegrounds, I see 6 key battlegrounds favoring Trump right now, including Pennsylvania. So if 6 key battlegrounds are favoring Trump right now, out of the 9 that I'm seeing right now, I know few of them have, as you were mentioning earlier, few have been called by few networks, but let's keep it this way. So where do you see Democrats? Yeah, I think
There is very little path here. I mean, so basically, since we talked last, we're now getting more of the kind of early vote, and I think some of the election day vote in Pennsylvania. Bucks County has flipped very narrowly, but that's a big problem. About 50%, 55% of the vote in there in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which is one of our key counties that we're monitoring tonight. Biden won that by about 4%. Trump is now winning that. That's devastation. That should not be happening. That's the exact opposite way. Then you go up a little further in the state, Northampton County. Trump is winning that one by 5. That's a county Biden narrowly carried in 20. Monroe County, Trump is also narrowly ahead in there with 95% of the vote in. Monroe County is right beside Lackawanna County, Scranton, Pennsylvania. That's a county Biden won by 6. Trump is now winning that. Like, that's the swing we're seeing in these counties that are starting to get more and more votes in. In Northampton and in Monroe County, you're seeing 4 or 5 point swings. So yeah, this is very poor showing for Democrats tonight. And speaking to kind of the issue we're talking about with there is definitely lower turnout in minority communities, and the ones that are turning out are voting for Republicans. And we saw this in the polling, and I think obviously you could talk about like, oh, the left us, and that's fine, and there are that's a very good way to put it. Actually, I completely agree with that, but I can maybe contextualize that with some numbers specifically, because as we talk about inflation and all these issues, inflation and crime, focusing specifically on inflation, inflation affects the people who have the lowest incomes. In the U.S., the people who have the highest incomes are generally white voters, and people who have lower incomes are generally African American and Hispanic. In terms of the U.S., the group that has the highest percent home ownership rate is white voters. Slightly below that is Asian voters, and then Black and Hispanic at 48%. White is all the way up to 68% home ownership rate. So when you look at the price of goods increasing, the price of a pound of meat at the supermarket, at the price of rent per month, the people it would most impact are lower income renters, and those people are predominantly African American and Hispanic voters, and those people predominantly are in the cities, and that's where we're seeing the biggest swing tonight. Another big city we're not talking about tonight is Chicago, Cook County in Illinois. Obviously, doesn't matter. Harris has won the state, but you're seeing a 12-point swing in Chicago against the Democrats. Again, doesn't matter for tonight, matters for the popular vote, but that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing this massive swing in these cities where, again, as we've said tonight, the left left us. And it's I think they're saying the Democrats did nothing for this. And when you have Harris getting up there in the one interview she did on The View, where what would you do different than Biden? She says, well, nothing really comes to mind. That was kind of the turning point of the campaign in many ways. They had been trending down for a few. They basically got up to about a 5 point lead after the debate. Then they started trending down a couple points. They panicked, had her do a couple of media interviews. That's when she said that comment. And apparently that just kind of drove this into the floor here. It seemed like she had some small momentum in the last couple of days, but this is just an absolute complete repudiation of the Democratic Party from the top down. The swings you're seeing in not just the big cities across the US, in Philadelphia, in Detroit, in Milwaukee, in Chicago. You see it in Miami. The Republicans won Miami-Dade by 10 points. That's the first time since the 80s that they've won Miami-Dade County, which obviously has Miami. The Rio Grande Valley, massive shift towards Republicans in the Rio Grande Valley. That is the Texas border. Uh, you're seeing these shifts across the board in all these more diverse counties. And we saw that, but the problem is we thought that would be offset by gains with white voters, and that those gains never happened. So that's where we are right now. And there is a huge story of this. And I think one of the bigger things, and it's obviously with the new election of a president, there's a lot of things to talk about. What does that mean for markets? What does that mean for inflation, et cetera, interest rates? Where does the Democratic Party go from here? what like what even is the Democratic Party anymore? Right? The Democratic Party used to be the party of working class minority voters. Trump stripped away the working class bits of it in 2016 when he won the Rust Belt, and now he's come for the rest of that in 2024 now. And this is a party that openly welcomed Liz Cheney's endorsement and Dick Cheney's endorsement and all those other white Republicans, and they're the people that are similar to them in suburbs across the country are actually rejecting their party. They're saying we don't like those people anymore. There's a reason why we don't like them, and they're punishing them for that as well. So where does the Democratic Party even go from here? And as we talk, the Senate map keeps getting worse for Republicans, for Democrats. They're now behind by several points in some of these key swing states. In those, there is a very real possibility, and I'd almost think it's more than likely that Democrats won't control the Senate again until 2030. That means even if you win the presidency in 2028, you're not going to be able to appoint a new Supreme Court justice for another 2 years into that presidential term, at minimum. And that is just on the Supreme Court alone. You have two older Republican justices. They could retire a few months from now into Trump's term. You could lock in a young Supreme Court conservative majority for a generation by before the end of 2025. And at that point, then even if Democrats win the presidency and they win the House, if you can't win, because mathematically every Senate seat is only up every 6 years, so there are just not enough Senate seats up for Democrats to even control the Senate. So even if the Democratic Party wins the next presidential election, they won't be able to pass any laws because you need to pass a law through the House and the Senate. So they're not going to be able to pass laws until the 2030s. Like, that's the dire straits of this party tonight. the Democratic Party might not recover from this election. Like, and that sounds hyperbolic, but it's not really. This is a horrible election night for them, where their base has been ripped from them, and the base they thought they were getting never came. So I honestly don't know where the Democratic Party goes from here tonight.
Yeah, very, very good points.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good points.
Very nice.
Yeah, very nicely. Yeah, very nicely analyzed. I'm actually, the pleasant surprise for me is I'm really enjoying the points that Ramona G has brought up, and actually everyone in the studio, they were also during the break they were complimenting Ramona G. First of all, thanks to you. You brought in some very good discussion here from the ground zero. Robert, your grip on elections, on the issues is amazing. Thank you so much for that. We're not wrapping up as yet. We still have a few minutes to go, but yeah. I thought I'll just compliment everyone for what they've brought on the table. So Ramona Ji, thank you so much. Robert, really, you brought some very good points. Pankaj Ji, as always, a good 17 years we've been discussing, on TV, radios, different platforms. So thank you so much. Very entertaining. And your Wednesday's show, every Wednesday, Pankaj Ji is there on Radio Y, and in the evening he's on Channel Y every Wednesday. So thank you for, this is one show all our viewers, all our listeners to really anticipate. Thank you so much. Arvind Ji, thank you so much for all your support once again. Quito is going to be back soon. I know he's gone for dinner, maybe a drink or two as well, I guess. I guess
he's disappointed or happy?
You know what? I'll let Robert answer that one. But one thing I definitely want to say this, since you're talking about disappointment, I think there's radio silence as far as the supporters of Democrats are concerned. And as Robert was asking what their future could be, I'm sure a lot of them are thinking what their future could be. For almost good 150 plus years, Republicans and Democrats, since the Civil War, they've both been very close to power. But I would say in the last quarter century or so, what I've seen, I'm sure we all remember the Bush era. We've seen many movies on that, whether it's Vice, one of my favorite movies as well. So how things panned out in the Bush era, and then here comes Obama. There are bringing a lot of hope. Before that, the Democrats, I think they would. We're talking about identity and culture. Ramona Ji, no, actually. Just now, Robert was making a point, very good point. Robert was making that this was a party of a certain demographic, right? But I don't think so. It's about identity. Actually, Trump is about identity and culture. If you're talking, he's taken over that baton. So there has been a radical transformation with the Republicans. There has been a radical transformation already with the Democrats, and I see. At the top, there will be, you see the alliances that have been making, as Ramona Ji was also mentioning. I mean, you bring in all these people, you fly at one place, opera is coming there, then there's Lady Gaga singing like a concert. So what's going on? Yesterday night. Yeah, that was yesterday. What's going on? What is going? I mean, we want to listen some solutions here. That wasn't happening at all. So I think there'll be a lot of transformation, which we are going to witness for Democrats and actually for Republicans as well. We've already witnessed that, despite, I think so, we're not calling Trump here, but despite if Trump wins the race tonight, I still see a lot of transformation, because who's going to be after Trump? Because as Ramona Ji was mentioning earlier, I mean, this is Donald Trump's party. I mean, everybody is out there. There isn't everybody. No Republican now. No Republican. I mean, with due respect, Liz Cheney, maybe we could say the media did their own spin, maybe not, but look at Liz Cheney. I mean, there's no one who can really stand up and question Trump. So what's going to happen after Trump? There has been a radical transformation, more transformation on the Republican side. And then when we're talking about identity and culture, I think that baton has been taken over by the Republicans, that has been taken over by Trump. And the party which we could say, I mean, the key question which everyone is asking in almost everywhere, Pakistan, you see that's happening in India too, that's happened in Canada too. That's happening in Canada too. Yes. The Liberals didn't win the 2019 election. Liberals won 2015 election. The Liberals didn't win. It was the Conservatives who lost in 2019. It was the Conservatives who lost in 2021. Yes. And I think once again now it will be the Conservatives won't win. It will be the Liberals who will lose. The Conservatives, because
2015, Liberals win or Justin Trudeau win? I just want to be clear. Just
no, at that time it wasn't Justin Trudeau by himself. I mean, you had Harper for a good 10 years. He ran my.
2015. 2015.
Yeah,
He was
2015.
number 3. Liberal Party was number 3.
The Liberal Party was number 3, but I'm saying by 2015, you're right. By 2015, I mean,
Yeah,
10
years.
Yeah,
10
so
years of Stephen Harper.
10 years of good 10 years of
Just
Stephen
I want
Harper.
to make a point. In North America, there is a celebrity type of personality who overcomes the election. Like Donald Trump, Justin Trudeau has got his own brand. Even in the last election also, Justin Trudeau overcome because of his so much of policies. You think the celebrity personality touch George Bush Jr., Bill Clinton, then Obama.
You forgot.
I'm not talking about party. Here comes one personality comes in in US after Trump. There's something like a Trump comes and he wins the election. It is not because of party or not.
I agree with you 100%, and I can name 10 people like that. And the father of all that thing that you just mentioned was Ronald Reagan. I mean, he was good in movies, but then here he comes, Ronald Reagan. And of course, he did a few good things.
Even in Tamil Nadu, it happens like this.
Tamil Nadu, Andhra
Celebrities,
Pradesh,
they
India,
are political. They are not known anywhere.
Pakistan, Imran Khan, Pakistan as well, India, Pakistan. This happens all over the place. You're right. That happened in Canada as well.
Happened in Ukraine also.
That happened in Ukraine. A comedian, yeah, that happened in Ukraine as well. So that happened in Croatia. That happened in that phenomenon. You're right. I mean, yes, I still remember. Ramona G once said, for municipal elections. So she made a very good point that still is with me. She said, in municipal elections, all you have is your name. There's no party backing you. So if you have a name, obviously that goes to your credit. So even at a federal level, I would say, if your charisma, your style, your last name, your personality, so many things do count. Yeah, Ramona Ji, you go ahead.
So being in California, I've noticed a lot of things. So given that Kamala Harris is from California, given the state, okay, so there's this massive issue that's come with when it comes to the youth for gender affirming therapy. And what this is even though there's about 25 states that have banned it for anybody under the age of 18 to take puberty blockers and go through a transition, this is something that is a massive issue when it comes to how parents feel. California was the first state to ban school rules requiring parents to be notified of children's pronoun changes. That was the start, and then it continued from there. So that's been one of the massive things. The other thing is about, can men play in women's sports when they identify as a woman? And this is something these are things that Donald Trump has spoken up about. And these are things that Kamala Harris hasn't really so much. So, there's so many other things. So when we say the left us, we're talking about, aside from, what's happening when it comes to inflation and can you afford things. And that's been the biggest part of our discussion tonight. But there's all these other underlying issues that have come up. In California, what I found was really strange was when I went into the local, like what would be a Shoppers Drug Mart, like whether it's a CVS or Walgreens or Rite Aid, I saw that there was a lot of, or even at Target, there was a lot of like products such as Tide, detergent, deodorant under like behind glass cases, right? Usually you see that in a department store when it comes to like jewelry or expensive things, but these were common day products that were behind cases and there were locks. So if you wanted to buy something, you had to find an attendant to get them to open up the case to get, for you to purchase detergent or toothpaste. Turns out that in California, they came up with, what was it? It's Prop 47, which is anything that was stolen under the value of $950. It was reclassified from a felony to a misdemeanor. So what happened was shoplifting was happening because people felt like they're not going to get charged and sentenced. And so therefore, a lot of stores closed up and you had the average drugstore locking up these items. So what California went through just with Gavin Newsom and the likes of Kamala Harris and all of that has tremendous shift. And when we talk about 20 million illegal border crossers, well, there's been, Trump has said this, Elon Musk has said this, a lot of, people have said this. Now, whether you decide if it's true or not, but they're speculating, they're saying, well, why would under Biden, why would they open up the borders that way, that they would allow the crossings and then for somebody to apply, for a status to stay? Well, they're suspecting that, well, it's about amnesty. Does that mean that eventually, 20 million in the country, in the United States, does that mean that that would remove these swing states? These swing states decide how an election goes. That's why we stay up as late as we do to just watch these swing states to see where the election's going to go. So there's a lot of speculation. There's also things that came out, whether, Kamala Harris supported sex change for inmates in prison, or with the latest thing again out of California, that there should be a law passed to put down payment for people who have, crossed the border, who are not legal yet in the country, for them to be able to become homeowners. So when you hear all these things, and the average American's going through inflation and being able to support themselves and their family, and what's happening with, all these things in the schools, the pronouns, the parents not being told, all these transitions happening. It's a lot that's going on in this country. And these are things that Donald Trump spoke up against, and he was able to, and you're right, this is an anger vote. People are angry. People are angry. Even the people on the left are angry. Democratic voters are angry. They're saying, well, why would we have the state of affairs this way? That's why they even say, well, why are we also funding? You hear that a lot on the ground. Why are we funding, wars overseas when we need the money within the school systems for infrastructure, bridges, roads, everything falling apart? Like, there's a lot of this stuff that he says, and a lot of people could say, okay, well, he's just being angry, or and she brushes it off as saying that, that he repeats himself, and that they're sunnier ways, and she's, a happier type of person, and sunny ways, and all of that stuff that they talk about. But at the end of the day, people understand what's going on in their pocketbooks. They understand, and then when they see that all the border crossers have been put up in hotels, and what they're being funded for with taxpayer dollars, they're looking at themselves and saying, well, why is this happening in our country? And that's why when he says America first, and he says, if the production doesn't happen in America, if you're not producing in America, then you have to pay a tariff in America. Well, that resonates with people after what they've been through for 3.5 years, 4 years. Pocketbooks are absolutely hurting. So this is, just to give you a kind of background in what's happened in California, what's happened to some of these states, and that's how she's been branded, and she hasn't been able to say or show otherwise from that, and that's unfortunate for her, and in this case the Democratic Party, because in the 60 days under her banner, they weren't answering questions, not in a fashion that anybody could understand what they would do and how it would impact their bottom line.
Yeah, these are some very good points. And the 6 states that we were mentioning, which I think Donald Trump, out of the key battlegrounds, 9 key battlegrounds, the 6 states that we were mentioning, North Carolina, most of them have called. Robert, is it safe to call North Carolina? North Carolina is, I think we should take that out of the equation. It's for Trump.
So yeah, no, that's done.
Yeah, that's done. Let's leave that out now. The remaining 5, I think they're in Donald Trump's kitty. I don't think so. It's looking good for the Democrats. So with 6 key states, North Carolina already out, 16 more electoral votes, and the other key ones that we're talking about, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. I think it's Donald Trump. They are, if I may say, they are very much almost set to get the control of Senate. Just for viewers' benefit, I'd like to tell you that House and the Senate, these are the 2 key legislative bodies, and in case the Republicans have good control, strong majority, you need 51 here in the Senate, and you need 270 plus there. So it looks like the Republicans will have control of both the House and the Senate. They'll be able to drive their legislative agenda quite smoothly for some time now, and it's up to Trump now which direction he wants to take this country. But before we get on to that, and call it a day over here. I still want to stick with the, Robert, I want to ask you for a minute here. What do you think? Out of the 6, North Carolina is out. The 5, I would say, I'm not calling them right now, but I would say 95% chance it's going with Republicans. I'm not saying it's over, but it's almost over for Democrats. Or do you think there are 25, 30, 40%, or 10% chances for Democrats? Robert, your take.
No, I mean, just looking around, yeah, I agree with that assessment. Just looking at the counties, we have more of the vote in Pennsylvania. Erie County, Pennsylvania, another one of our key counties tonight. A county Biden won, a county people consider to be a crucial part of that victory. He won it by 2,000 votes, right? In a state he only won by less than 100,000 votes, right? So a key county. This is actually not far from us, just across Lake Erie from the studio there. That is Trump is now winning that county by about a point and a half, with 95% in, winning that by about 2,000 votes. That's kind of the story of the night here. I don't see how, once you get everything in the swing, okay, yes, there is more votes in Philadelphia. Yes, that's fine. But even then, in Philly, Biden won it 81 to 17, 81 to 18 in 2020. It is now 78 to 20. So even then, you got a bigger basket of votes, and there's thousands of votes there. But even then, it's still a smaller margin than before. And in the other counties, when you're in Bucks County there, which is, there's still more to count in Bucks County, but when that one's looking the way it is, and everything else, and then again, if you're seeing these kinds of swings in Pennsylvania, I cannot imagine that once we start getting more vote in these rural counties in Michigan, and some are coming in, there is more to come in a lot of these counties, but I cannot imagine those ones being completely different than Pennsylvania, or there being a very specific Pennsylvania swing towards Trump, and in other counties that I'm seeing in Wisconsin, I'm seeing the same thing. And again, Georgia is not called. It could still get closer. Trump is only up about 120,000 votes in Georgia. It will be close, but again, in some of the counties in Georgia, you are seeing pretty strong swings towards Trump. That being said, though, you are seeing some swings to Democrats in the suburbs. I just don't think it's enough. The only reason this race isn't called is because we don't quite know exactly how many votes there are left in Atlanta. Once you know that number, then you figure out what the percent, like what margin you need for those, and that's how you calculate that. Again, at this point, it's just a matter of math. Once we know that number, then you're going to start seeing Georgia being called. The only one I could possibly see, and then obviously based on the damage we're seeing in the Hispanic areas of the U.S., um, I'd be shocked to see Harris be able to pull out Arizona. Arizona is going to take days to count, so we're not going to know that one tonight. The only one that could possibly buck the trend would be Nevada. Nevada is its kind of own special little state. Um, it's very small, lot of California expats in the state, so it's not. If there was one that could buck the trend, it could be Nevada, but at this point, that's a very small comfort to the Democrats, just picking up the 6 electoral college votes of Nevada. I don't think that's going to make them feel much better if that's the result, if that's the only one they pick up tonight. So of the, I guess we could call it, there were 6 remaining swing states on the board: Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. I think they all go to Trump, and I agree with you 90%.
You're saying 90% they're all going to go to Trump, yeah. So I think more or less we both agree. You know what? In the last few election nights that we have done, Quito would come here in the studio, and right at the start of the show, 6:30 p.m., he would say, this is going to happen, and that would happen most of the time, and Robert would back him, and we would have a good time here. It's like Christmas. But today I was asking Quito, so he didn't pick up anything today, and hopefully he should be back here soon. But I think I had to play his role today. That's why I picked Pennsylvania. So here I'm picking Pennsylvania once again. Nevada, you're right, given. I doubt Nevada is going to change the course. But even if it does change course, okay, given. You were talking about Arizona for a minute, Arizona given for a minute. You're talking about Georgia for a minute given. Though I agree with you, 90% these states are going to go to Trump. So now I'm also announcing for what's going to happen for next 1 hour, 2 hour, 1 day, 2 days. And I want your opinion, Robert, and I want Ramona G's opinion on the point that I'm about to make. I think what would happen is Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, the moment you get Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, it's all over. That'll be the tipping point. Thank you. You may or may not take Nevada. You may or may not take Arizona, Georgia. It will not even matter. This is what I think. The moment you have these 3 states, thank you. No discussion after that. Robert.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, at this point, there is the matter of math. I agree. This is at this point exceedingly likely to be a Trump presidency for the another 4 years. That part is very clear. The problem is that, and this is where Trump has in many times had some issues with the media and election calling. I suspect he will come out tonight and declare victory. I don't know if he will officially be declared the winner by the AP, but to be fair to Trump, it's in name only. Like, he would not be the president elect, but only in name only. Is there mathematically a way that you can win, that Harris could be able to win Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin? Yes, mathematically there is a way, but it would involve like, oh, okay, well, if this bunch of mail ballots that's going to come in the next 24 hours, if that's like 90% D, which sometimes it can be depending on where it's from, if that were to happen, and then this, and then this, and then this, it's possible. And that's why the networks will not call it. Mathematically, they can't call it at a certain point. I suspect Georgia will be called very soon now. And once that's done, then Wisconsin will probably be after that. The problem, though, is the fact that Arizona will take several days, and Nevada will also take several days. So Donald Trump might not be, because at this point, when looking at the board, all the Republican states have been called. The states we expected Trump to win, with the additionally North Carolina added to that as well. Alaska polls will close in about a half an hour. That will be an extra 3 electoral college votes for Trump. That will get him up to 233. Then at that point, then okay, say it's Georgia. At that point, if you give him Georgia, that's another 16. That gets him up to 246. The thing is, at that point, Wisconsin is actually only 10. So at that point, then you're only at 256. You'd actually need a call in either Pennsylvania or Wisconsin. I now again, does it really matter? No. Could there actually be a call in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania tonight? Possibly, but it's going to be at like 2, 3 a.m. So it's going to be a couple more hours. But at this point, I really like, mathematically, can Harris win? Yes, but it's like you really, really, really have to stretch the numbers to get there for tonight.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you have Pennsylvania and Michigan, so Wisconsin, either one of those, Wisconsin or Arizona, you get it, and you've crossed the 270 number. So as long as the 3 states, including, I'm just saying, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, so you add one more state, whichever state you want to pick. So we can pick Michigan. So if you pick Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. So out of the total left, I think there are 93 electoral college votes. Out of that, all we need is 3 states, not we actually, Trump. I mean, for when I say we, I mean to call it. We won't call it right now, but I think Trump is very comfortable. So these 3 states, and it's over. And as I just mentioned earlier, I'm not saying this will happen in the next 1 hour, 2 hours, or 4 hours, or a day or 2, but whenever this does happen, this seems to be the likely path. And other than these 3 states that I've mentioned, I'm not discounting the fact that yes, the other states could also fall in line with Trump right now. Ramona, do you have any different idea what Robert and I are discussing right now? Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think that this is Trump is very much in a position to take this. Right now he's at 230 and Kamala Harris is 210. I project that he would go up to at least 248 safely. Given of his lead in terms of Middle America, it seems to be for him. And even so, when you look at all the, when it comes to the East Coast, all the border states from Texas to Florida, of course, and you have Alabama, Mississippi, all of them, Louisiana. So it's a no. It makes sense to have all the border states go towards him. When it comes to California, of course, that's highly Democratic area. But yeah, Nevada is unknown right now. There are certain counties that usually are very towards the Democrats, and I've actually worked with some campaigns now in Nevada, and it's very hard for the Republicans. So that's to be seen. But when it comes to the rest of Middle America, you got it there. I mean, I traveled throughout Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and the turnout for him, and Pennsylvania, the turnout for him was tremendous. And so it's not surprising to see that he is leading in Pennsylvania, that he is leading in Michigan, as well as Wisconsin. The rest of it, it was a no-brainer to see the rest of the country, like whether I went through Missouri and Kansas and Oklahoma and all of that. Like the turnout I saw for him was like no other. I was even able to catch him in Arizona as well, and they're the same thing I saw through the consensus of from that Middle America. Of course, we knew that New York and the rest of them, on the East Coast, would go Democratic, but still not enough for him. So yeah, I mean, regardless of how this goes tonight, when it comes to the Senate, you have the Republicans right there. When it comes to the House, they're there as well, and the governors. So you know, whichever way
Sorry,
this
so
goes.
sorry, so sorry to interrupt. I think Georgia, the results are out for Georgia as well. So Trump wins that as well. We're discussing. I think other than Pennsylvania, I don't know why I set up my mind on Georgia today, and I said Trump is going to take over. I think I'm going to buy a lottery on the way back home today, tonight.
And everything is closed.
Yeah, and anyways, yeah. So yeah, we have the luxury of looking things in the hindsight right now. It's very easy to say Trump is going to win, but when we started at around 6:30, or even 7 for that matter, when the poll numbers started coming at that time, I don't know why I had this thing in mind that this is how it's going to pan out, and for whatever reason, because I had this one thing in mind. Even the wives are kind of reluctant to tell their husbands. Ramona G was mentioning there is an ad to that. I didn't know there was an ad to that as well. Ramona G was an ad. Sorry to interrupt. Please carry on, Ramona G. Please.
Yeah, it was Julia Roberts who did the ad for "Don't Tell Your Husband." There's been post-its in bathroom walls that are circulating on social media about "Don't Tell Your Husband." It's obviously it's because of Roe v. Wade, right? This is something that the people who are supporting Kamala Harris are, whether and there've been a lot of people who've been interviewed who have girls and who have daughters, and they say, for the sake of our family, we want to be able to support Kamala Harris, who says she's going to bring back and make it, law for abortion. But that was the other thing. She would have to be able to go against the filibuster to be able to make that law. And it looks like tonight that's not even a case for that. Because of Roe v. Wade, it went back to the states for them to choose individual states. And that was the other drive, for people who want to make sure that their state does support abortion. Well, that comes down to, having the right governors in place and Senate. And that's it's a state level now. And we'll see what the other issues that, Democratic voters are worried about. They're worried about, gay marriages, gay rights, some of those things being rolled back. We'll see if that's going to be the case, but this is why this election has been very divisive in that sense. For North Carolina, more specifically, like they went through the devastation, and we saw Trump, was there on ground zero right after the hurricanes, and it took the other side a little bit longer. And that was the other issue that they, the White House said, they ran out of money. They said that the funds have gone towards managing all the immigration crisis that they've been having, and so that was another backlash, right? So there's been a lot of things that the American voter has been upset about, in fact, angry about, and tonight it's showing in every way possible going against all the poll projections that have had them almost tied, right? Or within the margin of error. And here you are. It's always about the exit polls.
Yeah, and since you mentioned Roe v. Wade, I remember Ramona G and myself, we did a show, Editor's Take, on abortion, Roe v. Wade, and remember we had a lot of discussion on Roe v. Wade and abortion. But and you know the tone and tenor of the elections right now, it's very different than the midterms. I don't know, for whatever reason. Again, as much as we did discuss Roe v. Wade, we did discuss the abortion issue, but somehow I was convinced this is not going to, I mean, Kamala Harris can say whatever. There's a host of other issues which are to be tackled, rather than, as much as I still consider this important. That's why we did Roe v. Wade. We did an editor's take, remember, on this thing. But I thought there are many other things. So Kamala Harris can talk whatever she wants, but this may not resonate. Yeah, Ramona Ji.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing that right now. Some of the consensus before tonight was that you're going to have women come out in big ways for the Democratic Party because of, a woman's right to her body, and for Roe v. Wade, and Kamala Harris saying that she's going to, make it into law, and that's that. But we're seeing this to be different. It looks like some of these other factors have really angered people. Some of the things we mentioned, whether it's about crime, whether it's about illegal border crossing, inflation, cost of living, foreign wars, not getting Kamala Harris to really answer questions about some of these other things in an articulate manner. And also Donald Trump, really, he can't, for what's happened in the last 4 years, he can't take the blame for it, right? It comes down to Biden's not around to answer for those things. And Kamala Harris says that she wouldn't do anything different than Biden. And I think that's where things have, it shows right here. And I think at the same time, for the Democratic Party, they really miscalculated this. They thought that if they could hide her for long enough, which was for half of her candidacy, that, just put out the ads, put out the endorsements. The DNC was actually, it should have been a big boost to her numbers, because you had from Oprah Winfrey to the Obamas and to everybody else in Hollywood who showed up and gave great speeches for her. And then shortly after that, nobody heard from her for, for a good like 30 odd days. And it was like, well, what does she think? What does she stand for? For the longest time, she didn't have a policy platform on her website, so people didn't really know, is she going to be Biden? Is she going to be different? What is it going to be? And then, of course, with Tim Walz, there was the issues of him lying about some of his things, whether it was IVF for his children or him serving. Like, it was just, nonsensical lies that kind of came up about him. And so that put things into question. It was just, it created problems for him. And so all those different like missteps, right? Because she did raise a lot of money. She raised like $100 million, like easy. And there was a revival for the Democrats under her when they switched her out with Biden. And that's the other thing that Trump kept going hard against, right? Throughout his interviews and rallies, he kept saying, it was a coup d'état. They overthrew Biden. Biden got millions of votes. So he was very strategic on how he like switches his opponents and how he targets it. Like he did say, he's like, my campaign spent $150 million going against Biden, and then we had to re-strategize when we had a new candidate. And then right at that point, he then stopped putting down Biden, and he was like, and he said, she's she's not, like, she's worse than Biden. And then he kept saying, she threw him under the bus. And the way he's very strategic with his very simple language, what he does in his interviews and his rallies is he repeats himself a lot. And sometimes you wonder, like, why is he repeating himself? And then you realize if you repeat yourself enough, people will think it's a fact, what you're saying. Whether it is, and you have to fact check it or not, that's a whole nother story. But then he was strategic in saying, he hates Biden, hates Kamala, and she threw him under the bus, and it was a coup. That kind of also riles up people, right, in a different way. So he's very, like, he's an entertainer at the end of the day. He will just take the mic and he will freestyle it for hours. When he did the Joe Rogan podcast interview, it was a 3 hour interview. And afterwards, Joe Rogan said, he goes, you know what? He didn't take a glass of water uh, before, during, and after. He didn't go to the washroom even before, after, or during. He goes, he just talked for 3 hours and got up and he left to his campaign rally. So, the level of energy and focus he had. So people do commend him. That there's that stark contrast between him and what used to be Biden, and now it looks like Kamala Harris might be out of a job at the end of tonight. Tim Walz again out of a job. It's a massive shift, and to take the Senate, the House, the governors, all of it. I think America is going to look different, and its position in the world is going to be different. And I think that for the people in the country that we started the show off by praying for, we hope that the days to come will, and the years to come will, bring this country together. But more so, the other countries. What is Canada going to do? Right? Is Canada going to get more competitive? Because Donald Trump said he's going to reduce even corporate tax even more. Right? And here you have Canada that can't compete at the same rate. Canada has the carbon tax. Canada has a lot of different things that needs to now go back to the table. Is Justin Trudeau ready to go at it head to head with Donald Trump again, or does I think the new poll came out that Pierre Poilievre is more suited to be able to go up against Donald Trump. These are all factors that I think we're going to uncover in the next little while as Canada goes into an election cycle. First, I believe provincially, Ontario is going to go into an election probably by March, April, and then it's way before the federal election. I think the province wants to go, and then you're going to have the federal election after that. So Canada's going to be we're going to be watching how is Canada responding to the new president of the United States, and how's that going to all play. And I think that's going to definitely affect the voter base in Canada as well, and I think around the world.
Wow, you're talking about Donald Trump. Yeah, you're talking about Canada's elections. I think so. I kind of agree. We asked the finance minister, we asked the premier as well. The finance minister didn't say no. He says, of course, it's for the premier to decide, but then they didn't say no. So maybe we can see an early spring election in Ontario, and a federal election could be on the horizon. Are we really waiting for February when Jagmeet Singh has his pension thing settled down? I don't know. So, but we could see early elections at the federal level and at the provincial level here in Ontario. We're already witnessing so many provincial elections right across Canada, and then there is municipal election 2026. So maybe in a span of 12 months, we have federal, provincial, municipal elections.
Yeah,
let's see how it goes. Yeah,
I call it. Ford is going to go early. He's going to go probably in April. It's going to be an early spring election, and you mark it November 5th. I'm calling it. And then that he's going to go early in early spring, and then you're going to have the federal go after. So that's just how it's going to go. And sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead.
And it looks like it's for when it comes to the contrast of what we're seeing in the United States. I think the Liberals need to really step up their game, but it looks like it might be a wave for the Conservatives. After 10 years of Justin Trudeau. So we'll see how this all plays out, but it's definitely going to have an impact, especially if when the tariffs hit and, Canada's still in a bad situation, it's going to hurt even more. And you know what? Politicians think that voters have a short memory, but guess what? When it hurts their pocket, they don't have a short memory, right? They just don't. If they can't afford to make payments, if there's foreclosures, if they can't afford to just put food on the table to have, because the majority of it is, North America is made up of immigrants, right? I mean, Canada, United States. I'm an immigrant myself. I've living in both countries. At the end of the day, you leave everything behind in your home country to start a new life and at a dream of a better life, not a worse off life. And affordability is a massive factor into that, right? Safety and security. because a lot of people come from war-torn countries. A lot of people come from countries where there isn't opportunities the same way that there is in North America. So when you come to North America, you start from scratch. You leave your family behind. You leave everything you know. You learn a new language, a new culture. You get settled in, and things are harder. I don't think voters have a short memory of those things at all.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all that update, and you're calling an early election, Ontario elections. I think you and I both can buy lottery on our way back home today. I
Well,
wish
there's
we had more
betting
time.
apps. There's betting apps here in the US to bet on the election, and you realize like, oh wow, this is one of the biggest sports matches if you look at it that way.
Yes, yes, you're right. There's lots of betting going on as far as elections concerned. But I would want to hear final thoughts. 30 seconds for you, sir, and 30 seconds for Avinji, then 30 seconds for Robert, and before we let everyone go. Yeah.
From my point of view, let's see what happens with the economy because of this tariff and everything all across the world, not only on Canada. So it might hurt us, or it might increase their inflation, but I think it might hurt us more than their inflation, because there will be something in between where our like Mexico, us, or Europe, we will take that suffering to supply the things cheaper. So their inflation might not increase. If their inflation will increase, then Trump might has to go back for those tariff. Like it can their governors or their state as representative, they can go back to Trump that it's hurting their states. So why not take the tariff back? But these are the things which can go around for 6 months, 1 year or so. Let's see what happens.
Arvind, 30 seconds for you.
Sudhvir ji, problem is that short memory loss. There is always a short memory loss for the voters. If the interest rates are good in coming elections of federal, everything will be good for the Liberal Party. Ramona G should answer the upcoming federal election. The Conservative Party will be in a majority or in minority.
That's all.
That's all. No, that's all the decisions. No? Or Liberal Party will coming into a power as a minority government, because there is a short memory loss. Because in the previous election of USA, the Trump was winning the election. Then the COVID came, he lost the election. Before COVID, the Trump was getting a good points as comparison to Joe Biden. Even you check about the Indian election also. In January, the Modi was getting 400 seats, and how he get after 6 months, there was a short memory loss for the voters. Everywhere there is a short memory. So in coming elections, you don't know about the Canadian voters. You cannot overrule liberals. Upcoming international interference, like now present situation in Brampton, you see the different scenario altogether.
I think we need to have a neurologist also on our panel from our next election coverage.
There is always a short memory loss for the voters.
Short memory loss or brain fog, whatever it is.
Clinical psychologist.
10 months is a very long period. 10 months, even 4 months is a very long period for the voters.
For the voters, yeah. You got made some good points. Thank you. Robert, your 30 seconds. Please, Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this election, when we started the night, just a mere hours ago, it looked like about 50-50. It looked like there was an equal chance of either Harris or Trump winning, and it turns out that the polls underestimated Trump for the third time in 3 straight presidential elections. And it's very rare that happens, but it seems to have happened again tonight. Not a huge. This is, I would say, arguably the smallest miss we've had for some of these states, but it's a miss nonetheless. And I think there is a lot that on the polling side we need to think about for this. There are so many ways to think about the results of this election, and we've barely scratched the surface tonight talking about what this means for Canada, North America, the world, Ukraine, Taiwan, tariffs, and like there's so many things. And There's so many things that this means for the Democratic Party going forward, and Republicans, and the Supreme Court in the U.S. So many things have changed tonight. And I think when we wake up tomorrow, well, Trump will not be president yet, but I suspect we're probably only an hour or two away from him becoming the president elect. It'll probably be Michigan and it'll be Pennsylvania and Wisconsin that are probably called in a few hours. Michigan will probably take till tomorrow, but when we wake up tomorrow, I think it's going to feel like a very different world. And the U.S. has decided tonight, for the better or worse, to take a very definitive turn one way. And I don't know if we all completely understand what that means yet. I don't think they do either. I don't think people have realized what that means yet. But I think as of January 20th, the U.S. is going to be a very different country, and I think the world is going to be a very different place.
I couldn't agree more. The world is going to be a very different place, and I think I kind of agree with that. My last question to all our panel members would be, are we really satisfied? Because I know, Robert, you were asking this question earlier too, and I'll start with you, Pankaj, then Ramona Ji, and everyone else. Are we really satisfied with the leadership that we have? Obviously, Trump is going to be there for a good 4 years now. It's going to be a different country, as Robert is already mentioning. But do we have the leadership we need? What sort of leadership we need for Democrats? What sort of leadership we need for Republicans? What sort of leadership we need for a country as big, as strong, as powerful as US, the superpower? If you really ask me, the only country which really enjoys the superpower status. China is getting there. China is good. India is trying to do some good things. India will still take good 20 to 30 years to actually be even a developed country. I know they're doing good in the economy. China has done reasonably well for itself, but they're having their own issues. I mean, a country like US, which promises a future, a dream, American dream, that's what America promises. Till date, their currency is one of the strongest. They have the highest GDP, good per capita income, biggest defense budget, and so many other things. When I keep looking at US, more so these days because we're expanding in US. So I'm trying to figure out what makes US great. But when I look at the leadership, I think US definitely deserves better. I'm not talking about Trump or Ms. Harris anymore. I'm talking about the future leaders for US, future political leaders for US. That's what I'm asking, Pankaji.
I would go with Trump and Harris one only for 5 seconds.
Sure.
I will. Anybody cannot be the leader of that country. Both, I'm saying, both were not capable. Okay, Trump came, whatever he did. I would go little nearer to Obama kind of personality, or that kind of president. He also couldn't do many things because of his whatever constraint were there. Senate was not there, House was not supporting. So, but they need president, like it was Kamala's line, president for all. So you need some president for all who can lead by examples or leaderships. Their leadership should be strong because they are very, very big country and they are leading the world right now. They are dominating the world right now. World looks up to them and they're basically running the full economy of the world. So you need that kind of leader who can actually take like everybody along and take them to a new level. Yes, Arvind.
Yeah, I'll come to you. I just want to ask the same question to Ramona Ji. Ramona Ji, you're in US right now. What is the view at ground zero there? What's your own viewpoint? I want to know. Don't you think US deserves something better at the help?
Yeah, absolutely. The days where you had politicians that were a statesman, stateswoman, the days where they spoke eloquently and were policy driven and they debated in a fashion that was not condescending or below the belt remarks, and the days where they answered questions and they were intelligent and therefore you knew that there was a difference why they're able to run for president and be elected, aside from the rest of the country. Yeah, I mean, I think those days have changed, definitely. Now it's below the belt type of politics. It's the rhetoric is, to the point where it mobilizes people to shoot and go for assassination attempts and all of that. So I think it's a different time. Yes, I think we all would hope that we go back to a more civil era where you have proper debate and you wouldn't have to guess that whoever has won the presidency, if they're the other side will concede and will congratulate them and then will work together across the aisle from one another. These are things that what makes a democracy great. And these are questions that we're all worried about how things are going to be tomorrow based on who gets announced tonight and how will the other side go after what we saw happen in the last election and all of that, but it's also disruptive times. And during disruptive times is when innovation happens. It's when greatness comes about, because you're pushed to not do the same thing, not to think the same way, but maybe think outside the box. And as much as this may seem like troubling times, chaotic times, scary times, I would have to urge and remind everybody that it's during high divinity there's also negativity. There's always a balance, right? You have the balance of both spectrums, and that's polarity. So it's not just all bad, there's also a lot of good. And I think that's what we need to stay hopeful for. And I would say, we should be the example on how we're going to conduct ourselves, how we're going to talk to someone who has voted for probably a party or a candidate that we didn't vote for. And if we can stay civil, because we're the majority at the end of the day, and if we can be civil and we can speak respectfully of one another and collaborate, and I think it's important to pray. I think we need to pray for this nation, because it is a superpower. It does lead the world. We want to pray for its healing and also the rest of the world. I mean, it's times where we are in it together, right? That I know that that phrase came out during COVID, but at the end of the day, when there's wars, it affects us all, right? When there is challenges, it affects us all. So I think on that note, it really comes back to us and how we're gonna be, regardless of the type of leadership we see, and what is it in our part that we need to do more.
Yeah, and as far as the popular vote is concerned, there's still, I mean, we're close to the poll surveys, whatever the poll surveys predicted. So since we're talking about popular vote, the poll surveys, why don't I bring Robert in for his comments on this one? Robert, what do you make out of, I mean, even did the pollsters read it wrong, or you thought they're still close? And our own poll surveys that we all did together. So I want your comments on all these things.
Yeah, not not a horrible night. This is not 2020 level night for the pollsters tonight. Not I would say not our greatest night either, but not a bad night. Again, when you have all these states within a point, within 2 points, there is kind of that bell curve where you could expect results on either end of that spectrum. That being said, when you're in this, when you see the results you're seeing tonight and they're all going the exact same way by about 2 to 3 points, that's a bit of a problem, right? Now, polling in the US is not dead, and this is not a 2020 was a horrific, once in a generation type miss. This miss is kind of similar to like 2012 but in reverse. So not the end of the world. We knew a lot of these states were going to be very competitive. We knew that they were going to be very close. We knew the popular vote was going to be very close. Uh, but the polls did miss a couple points towards Trump, and I think against Trump. And if you obviously had those correct polls, you would have come into the night as Trump like a 75% favorite rather than the 50-50 it was. So did that move something? Yes. I will say the miss was a lot larger with white voters than non-white voters. We actually, the polls did a very good job of measuring the white voter, the non-white voter, the black and Hispanic vote. They measured those pretty accurately. But there is something when Trump's on the ballot, that there is a certain subset of white voter in the US that when Trump is on the ballot, for some reason, they don't seem to show up in any of the polls, and yet they show up on election day and elect him president or get him very close to in the case of 2020. So it's very weird, and the problem is white voters are the largest part of the electorate. So there is something very weird about that. But polling a lot of the races that we had seen, a lot of the data does make sense from that standpoint. This is just another polling miss against Trump, about a 2 to 3 point polling miss, and that's probably what this is going to end up as.
Yeah, and and the point that we were making earlier, I mean, the whole thing is whoever makes to the top of any political party, either it's Republican or the Democrats. From there on, like South Carolina. I don't even remember. I think it must be at least 50 years ago, or even more, 50 to 60 years ago, when they could have voted Democrats. Oklahoma. So I mean, there are only 7 states that we call as the swing states, and they could even, still vote. They will still go how they went 4 years ago. So overall, in U.S. election scenario, what I'm trying to say over here is, whoever becomes the party leader, most likely it boils down to 7 or maybe 4 swing states. Other than that, it's not too much. So I think the leadership contest, that has to be a bit different. I'm not sure what suggestions we have for that, so that we bring a very visionary leadership who can really take the country to the next level, because the challenges that US is facing, of course there are other countries. China has its own set of challenges, so does India, so does Russia, so does Germany, France, Europe. They all have their own challenges, but US, if the US really wants to still enjoy the superpower status in this century as well, US has to do so many things in a very different way, and I think the leadership would matter a lot. Ramona G.
Yeah, absolutely. Leadership matters. And I think, like we talked about, what does the Democratic Party look like after tonight? But I think also in 4 years, after Trump's term is done, and that's me guessing that he's going to be president by the end of the night, after his term is done, what does the Republican Party look like, right? Because the Republican Party has also changed a lot since Trump became their candidate, and won in 2016, and has really dominated that party. In first in those primaries where it was like 13 candidates, and everybody thought Jeb Bush might have a good chance, right? And he was out in no time. He'd raised 100 mil, and Trump, who had no political background, was able to take out, all the 13 candidates, or I guess 12 other candidates, and become the nominee. And from there, you just saw it happen, and how he's just, whatever has been thrown at him, he's been somehow been able to make a comeback. And when Bill Clinton had the name, had the title, the comeback kid, I think, Trump has now taken that title. He is the comeback kid. Like, he's been able to come back from all odds, whether it's the indictments and the cases against him, and so many different things, the first assassination attempt that just grazed him by the ear. Like, people who own arms, they say, from that distance, it would have, blown him through his skull had he just not turned and had it grazed. And it was unfortunate the people behind him were shot and killed. So, you have at all odds. It's just the way it is. And I think, like you mentioned, the point on Kamala Harris, like, did she earn it for her to become the candidate? Listen, at the end of the day, if there's destiny, right? There's a destiny. Okay, yeah, she ran for to become president in back in 2020, right? And then Biden took it, and then she became the VP pick, and then 60 days before an election, she was the presidential candidate. And look at Donald Trump, went from, a businessman to a celebrity, a reality TV celebrity, to president. So whatever is your destiny, it's going to happen. And so there's a bit of that, and there's a bit of, keeping a cool head about, okay, how are we going to deal in this climate? What do we need to do? And it's good, because I think everyone has now been shaken a little, and that's always a great place to be. To be a little bit shaken, and the unknown will bring the best out of anyone, hopefully. And if you're scared, then just, you got to lean into it, and we just take it one step at a time. But it is times that are going to be changing, and perhaps a change is good. Disruption is, I believe in disruption. Coming from a background in tech and telecoms, it's disruptive. This is how you innovate. This is how you invent, right? That everything is, but it always, and with any disruption, it creates a new market. It creates, as people lose one industry, other industries are made. And I think this is the same thing in politics, right? This is very disruptive for what we're seeing across the board, but it's going to be good.
Yeah, and I think we're almost towards the end of our show tonight. But some very interesting discussion that we've had today, and hopefully we will carry on with our election nights in the future to come. But I think now we're all looking forward for a different US in the next 4 years. That's definitely, but more so, what is the future of US that will not just depend? Yes, today it's definitely. I'm not saying definitely, but most likely it's Donald Trump. This is his America, his party controlling the reins of both the Senate and the House. But definitely in the coming years, that's what I'm looking ahead right now, because we've seen a lot of things change in the past. With there was a time when, as Robert was mentioning, the blue-collar guys, they would have the poster of these Democrat leaders hanging on there. But now I think things have changed for both the parties. They're at different extremes right now. Both are in the transformation stage. And let's see where the Republicans take their party, where the Democrats take their party, and where this US moves at. Pankaj, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure having you, as always, on the panel. Arvindji, thank you so much for your time. Robert, we couldn't have done it without you. Thank you for an amazing in-depth analysis, especially the polls, the numbers that you bring on board. Thank you so much for that, Robert. Treat having you on air. And Ramona G, once again, as always, it's good that you're in the US, you're at the ground zero in California. I know you were just mentioning you've traveled across many states in US, and the kind of in-depth coverage that you brought. Thank you so much for that. And at this point, I will not hesitate to thank our entire crew who's been working very patiently. Mahinji, thank you so much. Isha ji, thank you so much. We have Jasmeet ji, thank you so much. Gurpreet ji, thank you so much for leading the operations. Shubhi ji, your technology, thank you for that. Your numbers, your graphic, Shubhi Singh, thank you so much for that. Mansimran ji, thank you so much. Surya ji, thank you so much. Monarch ji, thank you so much. And Maninder ji, thank you so much. And these are all the members here, but I'll also like to thank everyone who's going to take charge tomorrow early morning, because most of us, not me.
No, I will be.
Oh yeah, you'll be on our show tomorrow. You're there on our show tomorrow. You will be with me, but I've taken a cue from Ramona Ji. She just said today that Donald Trump he didn't use the washroom for a good 3 hours, yes, and he was off his campaign. By the way, I've been live on radio. Yeah, no, radio and TV shows, including 7 + 3, 10 hours. So I've done a 10-hour shift live on radio and TV together. But more so is thinking, how many times did I use the washroom? I did use at the start of the show, but in the middle, we just had our food, right? But for these 7 hours consecutively, before the start of the show, we did use washroom, if that was a criteria. but yes, for 7 hours at a stretch, just a 20-minute or maybe 30-minute break for our food, 7 hours at a stretch, and 3 hours in the morning today. Usually I do 2, 3, 4, or 10 hours of shift I've done. So, but it's a long way. I mean, wish we also have the similar energy as Trump has, yes, at his age,
Definitely.
Almost 28 years more. So after 28 years, I don't know, after 28 years, will we have same energy as Trump has? But yeah, hats off to him. They all have great energies. This is what I've seen, 60s or 70s, even in 70s, even after 20 years, if we join politics, we'll be considered quite young. At 70, he's joined politics. Okay, thank you so much once again to everyone. Hope you have a wonderful evening. We'll carry on our election nights. We'll carry on Ymedia Political Sensex, Ymedia Foreign Policy. You're loving that these days. We'll definitely carry on Ymedia Foreign Policy Reports. We'll carry on our Ymedia Political Sensex, Ymedia Big Shot for sports. India versus Australia. It's going to be a mouth-watering series. India are going down south, and it's going to be a very interesting game. And also, we're going to carry on lots of other coverage. Stay tuned with Ymedia. Thank you.